Hello everyone and welcome to this showcase of the controllers I use to make my videos and just, well, play games in general. All of the controllers are USB, so all designed for PC. Don't expect much of cross-platform compatibility from these controllers, although you could find ones that do it, these ones can't. The four controllers I used from left to right here are the GameSir T4w, the mini controller for classic N64, the RetroBit Tribute 64, and the Retro Fighter BrawlerGen. Since you can all assume I use the GameSir for almost everything, I'll start with the Nintendo 64 controllers first. And you'll notice that I have two. Now there's a reason for that. The black one, which I'm showing you now, is the main one I use and highly suggest to everyone. It's available and only available from AliExpress, and I'll link it in the description if anyone wants to pick themselves up one after this review. The reason for this is because I have small hands, and I'm at one to liberty to say that that's true, compared to other people, that is. And as you can see, my hands barely reach the, well, they just fit around the controller. It's why I recommend this controller over the RetroBit. You see my fingers are clenched trying to touch the R1 and L1 button and Z buttons on the RetroBit, whereas they're not so on the Mini. Also, the D-pad is a lot easier to access. Not that that's a big deal, considering most Nintendo 64 games don't use the D-pad, but if for one occasion where you might be a regular player of Ocarina of Time Randomizer, where they do use a D-pad a lot, I don't see the RetroBit's D-pad as the biggest problem. The size is definitely its biggest issue. It's small. A lot smaller than the mini controller from AliExpress. For anyone wondering, both controllers come with the GameCube joystick, which I think is standard nowadays for Nintendo 64 controllers, as they don't wear out as fast or at all in comparison. Those old N64 controllers wore out after one weekend of Mario Party, so it'll last you a very long time. I use the mini controller from AliExpress almost exclusively when I play N64 games, as it's clearly the superior controller. But unfortunately, it's not available from very many sources. In fact, AliExpress, I think, is the only people that sell it. Unlike the RetroBit, which is available almost everywhere. Next up is the Retro Fighter BrawlerGen. Gen standing for Genesis. Now this controller I had to have. It's got the 6 buttons with the L1 and R1 for my Genesis Saturn and old 32-bit arcade game cabinets. The D-pad is pretty decent and the joystick is pretty good. It's not a GameCube joystick, but it's slick and not stiff, and works almost as well as a newer model controller's joystick. This controller really comes in handy when playing older games that don't handle the transition to using a joystick over a D-pad very well. I was surprised the joystick here actually does both inputs, so older emulators require a D-pad. This joystick will mimic the D-pad for you, so that you just set the D-pad in settings and move on. Usually it's one or the other, or in some cases you can't even use the joystick. Not with this thing. I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite controllers. Lastly, this is my main controller, especially when I'm playing anything on Steam, and that's the GameSir T4w. It's plain and simple and holds nicely. It also has a mode button, as all consoles seem to have nowadays, so you can enter Steam's console, for example, during gameplay and do what you need. It also has the turbo button, which I found more useful than I thought. It's simple to turn on and just as easy to turn right back off. This controller is obviously modelled after the Xbox controller because, well, Microsoft and all, but it is a little slimmer around the sides and fits my hands perfectly. Did I mention the triggers are like flippers? Not sure why, but they work fine. Anyway, those are my controllers I use to play games on my YouTube channel. My collection's not quite complete yet. I'd like to get a USB GameCube controller, but I haven't had a reason to yet. So as always, if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Be good to your mother, and I'll see you in the next one.